So if you head into the gallery and select Crossing Stars, you see that Iuno has been added onto the character roster, where we can see everything related to her kit information. And one thing that may come off as a disappointment is this passive right here that amplify any type of damage dealt by her teammates by 40% if they can refresh shields, like Augusta. Since no other resonator in the game can do this, it sounds like it significantly reduces Iuno's pull value, but I'm here to tell you that it's not as bad as it seems. So this will be my updated pull value breakdown using her official kit information to analyze her playstyle and come up with her team options, weapon alternatives, and finally my pull recommendations to help you prepare for Iuno. Let's start with Iuno's playstyle. Iuno is a very simple character to play with, performing 3 basic attacks or using her normal skill will allow you to use an enhanced skill, which makes her enter a special state called Half Moon. In this state, she can use her basic attacks and dodge counter to regenerate 40 stacks to do damage. The fact that Iuno has a special state dedicated for regenerating 40 stacks by just spamming basic attacks is actually pretty amazing, because you have to incorporate stuff like jump cancelling for other hybrid units like Chakuna to regenerate stacks more quickly, which might not be very comfortable for the average player. The best part is that Iuno does not actually depend on the basic attacks method of regenerating 40 stacks if her role in your team building is to outro quickly and buff another character like Jian, Zani, or Augusta. Using her liberation right after an intro skill will fully regenerate her 40 stacks, making it easy and faster to outro quickly to the next character in your team. Meaning that the basic attacks method of regenerating 40 stacks is meant for a hyper carry Iuno if that's your preferred playstyle, because her damage output based on the buffs that she can provide to herself and her percentage scalings is pretty amazing, but we'll get into that very shortly. When you have full 40 stacks, you just have to use jump to enter another special state that she can use to consume her 40 stacks called New Moon, where her moon ring turns into moon bow, as you can see right here. In this state, all you need to do is press basic attacks or skill to consume her 40 stacks to do damage, heal all your teammates, and recover more concerto energy to outro quickly from the field. When she has full concerto energy, just hold your basic attack button and she'll create a full moon domain with special buffing effects for Iuno herself and her teammate. Any resonator inside the full moon domain will have all their damage types amplified up to 40%, which is quite huge, but the issue here is that they need to be able to refresh their shields multiple times to gain all the stacks that gives you the 40% damage amplification. At the moment, Augusta and Iuno herself are the only resonators that can take full advantage of this buff because of their ability to refresh shields. For Iuno, it sounds like this buff only applies if you're playing her as a hyper carry, but she doesn't need the full moon domain to gain the 40% damage amplification. So let's dive a bit deeper into her damage potential and how she can fully utilize it regardless of her role in your team building. Her main sources of dealing damage when you have 40 stacks include the following: Resonance Liberation, which will have a multiplier of about 1100%. If you're confused how I arrived at this number, just note that the relationship between a level 1 and a level 10 damage percentage scaling is a factor of about 2. So if we use Augusta's Sunborn scaling for example, level 1 is 60% and level 10 is 119.29%, giving us a factor of 1.987, which is almost equal to 2. Moonbow basic attacks and her special resonance skills when she's in the new moon state will also offer pretty decent damage output due to the new percentage scalings when she has 40 stacks, and they scale off liberation damage as well, so having liberation damage bonuses on her echoes and her weapon can make her dish out some pretty insane damage when she's on the field. But the buffs doesn't stop there. Keep in mind that the liberation damage, moonbow basic attacks, and the special resonance skills she has access to can all benefit from the 40% all-type damage amplification without the full moon domain. She has a passive that grants her all the 10 stacks that she needs to receive the damage amplification by using an intro skill and her resonance liberation, meaning that as a sub DPS buffer for Jian, Augusta, or Zani, all her damage sources will benefit from the damage amplification, but keep in mind that it only lasts for 10 seconds since there's a high chance that the full moon domain will expire when she intro to the field in the next rotation. but as a hyper carry, she only needs the full moon domain to constantly refresh the 40% damage amplification buff duration. So, even though the damage amplification buff that she provides may not be universal for all damage dealers, because of the shield refresh condition, she can still make use of it to increase her damage output regardless of the role that she fulfills in your team building. With that said, let's get into her team options. Iuno's team building options are looking pretty good because there are a lot of teams to choose from. You can run her with Augusta and Jian because of her ultra skill that provides 50% heavy attack damage amplification. Since her damage potential is quite high, it'll significantly increase the overall damage output of the Jian team compared to using Jian with Mortefi. Iuno also offers a significant damage buff to Zani by replacing Spectre Rover and Showkeeper in the Zani-Phoebe team composition. The best part is that Phoebe's ultra buff always stays on the active character and not lost upon performing a swap or an intro skill to another character in the team, meaning that you simply need to start with Phoebe, intro and outro with Iuno, and finally intro with Zani, where she'll have the heavy attack damage amplification from Iuno and the 100% Spectral Frazzle amplification from Phoebe. For main DPS Iuno, her easily accessible sub-DPS buffer will be Zheng Xin if you usually lose the 50-50. Zheng Xin also provides another 38% liberation damage amplification to further boost her damage because all her damage sources scales off liberation damage. But Zheng Xin is really terrible at regenerating concerto energy, so you can slap the Makato Gauntlet on her and you should be good to go. What I really like about the Zheng Xin team is that it's perfect for hard content like holograms because you gain a shield from Zheng Xin and so much healing from Iuno and Zheng Xin as well, since they can both provide healing. Weapon options. Since Iuno has a high damage potential, you should be running a 5-star weapon to take full advantage of that. If you cannot afford her signature weapon, my first recommendation will be Verity's Handle due to the crit rate substat and it provides liberation damage bonus from the passive. Iuno can easily refresh the 48% liberation buff duration by using her special skill in the new moon state after casting her liberation. Second priority will be Blazing Justice as a crit damage statistic, which pairs well with the crit rate on Iuno's skill tree. Third priority will be Tragic Comedy, mainly as a crit rate statistic because Iuno's damage is not heavily focused on heavy attack damage. Abyss Surges should be the last option among the recommended weapon alternatives due to the lack of crit rate and crit damage substats, but feel free to use it if that's the only 5-star weapon option you have. If you don't have any 5-star weapon on your account, feel free to use Stonard or Ether Strike, which are the Battle Pass weapons, but they are locked behind a paywall, so be sure to keep that in mind. For her echoes, you should be using the 3-piece Crown of Valor and 2-piece Sierra Gill. As you can see right here, I've already pre-farmed her echoes, but the 4-cost, which should be the Lady of the Sea, is not leveled, and this is because her signature weapon is not released at the time of making this video, so I don't want to end up leveling crit damage while her signature weapon will also provide crit damage substat. The same thing applies to leveling up a crit rate focused, and her signature weapon will end up having a crit rate substat. So if you plan on getting your signature weapon, I highly recommend that you hold off on leveling up any Lady of the Sea focused echo. For your 3-cost, you should be running double area damage bonus because the 3-piece Crown of Valor provides up to 30% attack. As you can see right here, my 3-costs are from the Sierra Gill Sonata effect, which is an old set, so I had a lot of area damage bonus lying around. The 1-cost will be attack percentage as usual. Now, with all that said, here are my pull recommendations. There is a high chance that new units in the future will have the ability to refresh their shields, because if Kuro really wanted to make Iuno far more restricted, they could have done so by making the damage amplification much more specific, like area damage amplification, for example. So pulling for Iuno now can be a good thing for your account in terms of synergy with new units, even if they cannot benefit from the 50% heavy attack damage amplification from her outro skill. But if you're pulling just to make Augusta or Zani much more stronger, I don't recommend it if you're a free-to-play or low spender, because Augusta is already clearing every flaw in the Tower of Adversity in about 60 seconds on Jian's signature weapon with Mortefi, and Zani should be fine as long as you have Phoebe. So getting Augusta's weapon if you don't have Jian's, and getting Zani's weapon on a rerun if you don't have it on your account is the best way to improve their damage and save pulls as much as you can because the game hasn't reached that point where you need 3 limited units who all have synergy with one another to beat endgame content. That'll be of my updated pull value breakdown for Iuno. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel because it's free and you can always change your mind. Our Discord link will be in the pinned comment if you're having any issues with the game or you just want a place to chill or hang out. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.